Hello everyone, welcome to the Buzz the Prey Manga. Today we continue the latest Global Freeze chapter, rewritten and edited by me in English for a smooth reading experience. All visuals and story flow are personally edited to give you the best manga style storytelling. Support the original creator by checking the official manga. So let's dive right into the today's chapter.
Chapter 2884 Razor Strikes. Rant was puzzled, and just then, an angry roar suddenly came from beside him. When he turned his head, he was immediately shocked because dozens of wild puppets had somehow chased him into the area and were roaring as they pounced on him. Those hideous monsters had no concept of fear, only the pure urge to feed. They opened their blood-red basins and roared as they surged forward. "Damn it! Why did you have to bother me at this time? These guys aren't a fatal threat to Rant, but they're incredibly annoying." Rant just wanted to get rid of this Type 2 wild puppet as soon as possible. But at that moment, the desolate puppets suddenly turned around in midair. They didn't pounce on the body of the giant Rant, but instead rushed towards the spider web that resembled a cage. The wild golems densely surrounded the spider web like silkworm cocoons. After abandoning its physical body, the razor's core broke free. Soon after, the bodies of those dozens of wild puppets began to undergo strange changes. They twisted and deformed, no longer resembling human figures, but rather appearing as clumps of flesh that swelled and merged into a single entity. A moment later, a body of flesh and blood broke through the ball of flesh. It was a humanoid creature with short hair and 2 pairs of white wings on its back. After shedding his armor, he revealed an incomparably handsome face and a body as perfect as a statue. When Mu met Rant's gaze, Rant immediately realized that this guy was actually the flesh and blood of those Type 1 abandoned puppets, reshaping his own body. And those desolate puppets were actually willing to sacrifice their lives for. This guy can control these Type 1 desolate puppets, and he can even be reborn using their bodies. Rant felt a chill run down his spine. He had already gained the upper hand in the battle, but he never expected that his ability would be broken in this way. A powerful member of the spider demon race, your abilities are truly admirable. Your appearance might even lead people to mistake you for a simple-minded warrior. But now I have to apologize to you. You're very clever. Unfortunately, you've already lost your only chance to defeat me. With just a glance from Razor, the battle armor seemed to have its own will, tearing through Rant's spider web and flying over to reassemble itself on his body. Rant's gaze became incredibly solemn. Facing such an opponent, one could easily feel a profound sense of powerlessness. However, since it was successful once before, it can be tried a second time. It uses its own blood to overclock the opponent's body, making it unable to accurately control its own body. Unexpectedly, Razor calmly said to, "The biological factors of the Limu have deceived my flesh and blood, making it unable to resist this positive reinforcement. It seems you've figured out the physical characteristics of us wild puppets. Unfortunately, the ones you faced before were only the lowest level Type 1 Aragu. Your experience fighting them won't be effective against me." Rant's gaze turned grim. His opponent was incredibly clever, having already seen through his scheme. Therefore, his choice was bang. Suddenly, a loud explosion occurred on the spot, and thick white smoke shot out in all directions like an explosion, accompanied by an extremely foul-smelling gas. After inhaling those gases, Razor felt a wave of mental confusion and even fell into a brief state of dazedness. However, the flesh and blood of the creature quickly adapted to the toxin. The creature threw a punch forward, the fist striking the air and triggering a violent storm that directly dispersed the white smoke. Suddenly, however, he discovered that Rant's figure had vanished from his sight. That enormous body, as large as a mountain, vanished before our eyes. Looking in all directions, there was no sign of it leaving. Razor's expression was somewhat surprised. "Where is he? I can't find him. I never dreamed that Rant would be here at this moment." Rant's body flew away into the distance in an extremely bizarre way. That's right, it flew away. That enormous body, as large as a mountain, shrank to the size of a single finger joint in an extremely short time. It sprayed out a white spider web from its tail, which hung in midair and flew rapidly into the distance by the vortex of air. No one could have imagined that this seemingly magnificent spider demon would flee in such a way. The spider can transform into a biological turret several meters tall, or shrink into a tiny individual the size of a fingertip. This demonstrates the spider's versatility. Even after escaping a great distance, Rant was still deeply shaken. This damned creature can actually control a large number of low-level wild puppets, and it's impossible to kill. I really have no way to deal with it. If the two were to meet on a relatively level battlefield, it's not impossible for Razor to be sealed away. But now, we're on their home turf. They can summon a huge number of powerful puppets to help them. How can we fight them now? When one is at a disadvantage in terms of timing, location, and popular support, withdrawing from the battle is the wisest choice. However, on second thought, if Zhang Yi continued to stay in this area, he would inevitably encounter that kind of monster sooner or later, and he might die without Zhang Yi even needing to intervene. Rant made a decision in his mind. Continuing to fight blindly was not the best option. It will take some time to carefully study how to completely subdue these wild puppets. Just when Ramp thought he had escaped successfully, a dazzling light suddenly shone from behind him. A black beam of light, separated by thousands of miles, enveloped his body like a net. Ramp's tiny spider body suddenly stiffened, and its figure, which had been flying away through the web, looked back in midair. How could this be? I ran fast enough. How could they find me so easily? Boom. The giant beam of energy completely enveloped Rant. Soon after, saw Razor's body flying towards them from afar like a warship. You're smart. After realizing you couldn't beat me, you decisively chose to run away. But you seem to have forgotten one thing. Razor hovered high above, suspended in midair, coldly watching over you. I told you, I'm not the same kind of creature as those alien golems you encountered before. Why are you using the same common sense you used to deal with them to deal with me? Chapter 2885. The body of Rant, the god of the palm, crashed to the ground. His body, no bigger than a finger joint, was still incredibly strong. Although the attack had inflicted a considerable injury on him, it was not fatal. But now his biggest problem is doubt. Why is this happening? His face was full of confusion, not understanding how the other party had found his trail. He raised his right hand, and then suddenly slashed it down like a celestial weapon. Space tore apart at that moment, and a huge spatial rift pierced right through the spider demon's body. Even the powerful spider demon's body crumbled inch by inch at this moment. How could a spatial ability be like this? The spider demon desperately unleashed its supernatural powers to resist the tearing of the spatial rift. However, suddenly he understood what Kimmy had meant by those words. He had judged by common sense that the wild puppets would adapt and evolve by using the abilities of the other party. But was it possible that these wild puppets were not the same kind of creature as those alien wild puppets, and that his common sense was therefore invalid? Do you have any other abilities? If you have one, bring it out as soon as possible. Virtual battles are quite interesting, Reca asked coldly. And he clenched his fist. I've already adapted to the physical enhancement factor you just used against me. Thank you so much for making me stronger. Rant's teeth were grinding together. Unexpectedly, his own tactics led him into a terrible predicament. Keep attacking? Are you kidding me? I've exhausted all my methods. Despite his small size, he unleashed astonishing power, suddenly speeding away into the distance like a shooting star. But while he was fast, the shaving was even faster. He arrived late but arrived early, intercepting the spider demon in front of him, and then raised his seemingly slender and fair left hand to slash fiercely at the spider demon's body. This palm strike slammed the spider demon deep into the ground of the experimental planet. If you can no longer please me, then I will have no choice but to kill you and devour all your flesh and blood. As he said these words, his originally dark eyes gradually turned a crazed, blood-red color. An extremely violent and ferocious aura erupted from his body. He opened his mouth, revealing a mouthful of sharp teeth like daggers. Suddenly, a wild, excited roar erupted from his mouth. He fell headfirst, straight towards the spider demon. No! The spider demon's angry and terrified voice came from the ground, and an even more terrifying battle broke out. However, just 10 minutes later, the massive body of Rant, the Black Knight-level spider demon emperor with extremely powerful close combat abilities, was torn apart into dozens of broken pieces of flesh. With bloodshot eyes like a wild beast, it grabbed a huge spider leg with both hands and stuffed the 10-meter-long spider leg directly into its mouth, then swallowed it whole without chewing. How delicious! These alien creatures contain incredibly powerful energy within their bodies. He licked his lips, his face full of excitement, and the bloodlust in his eyes intensified. Kill. I want to hunt even more. In another area, arriving here was Zhang Yi's old friend, George Wiggins, the new Pope of the Holy See. The young man, who looked to be in his early 20s, was dressed in a magnificent papal robe, followed closely by 4 Templar Knights of the papacy. Although the War Knight and the discipline god Kori Orion, one of the 4 horsemen, was killed by Zhang Yi during the War on the Moon, the Holy See quickly filled the position. His successors were a group of short, long-haired girls with piercing eyes. Pope Wiggins and 4 Knights of the Apocalypse, representing the pinnacle of the Holy See's fighting force, were all involved in this operation. They walked on the ruins of the experimental planet, and when they looked up, they could see the fragments of broken stars scattered throughout the universe. Weren't they fighting a little too intensely? Pope Wiggins said with a smile. Behind him, Cardinal Arnold Oleb said with his hands at his sides, "This is the sin of the world, which will never disappear as long as life exists." Yes, all beings suffer. Individuals who are separated cannot understand each other due to the existence of mental barriers, and thus can only forever be suspicious, doubtful, and fighting. Only when everyone is united as one and returns to the kingdom of God will there be true harmony. Wiggins made this remark. But clearly, this is not the best time for him to preach his doctrines, because no one will listen. A threatening growl came from not far away. A wild golem discovered their presence, crawled out of the ruins, and without any hesitation, roared and charged towards Wiggins like lightning. Upon seeing this, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse immediately stood in front of the Pope, but Wiggins shook his head and stopped them. "You guys can't handle these guys, let me handle them." As soon as he finished speaking, facing the wild puppet charging towards him, he neither dodged nor avoided it, but simply slowly extended his left hand. The divine kingdom in the palm of your hand. An extremely bizarre scene unfolded. When the goblin was less than 3 meters away from Wiggins, his body suddenly split apart like a dandelion with a bang. That's right, it's disintegration, not collapse, not destruction, but something that seems to have been formed from dust, which is completely dissipated by a gust of wind. All that remained was his core of flesh and blood, formed from the condensation of life. Wiggins opened his left hand, and the flesh core floated lightly into his palm. Even powerful beings at the Black Knight level dare not touch it, because this thing indiscriminately absorbs all energy, matter, and flesh in its surroundings. However, it simply landed quietly in Wiggins' palm without any reaction. One could vaguely sense a special discipline emanating from Wiggins. Wiggins looked at the flesh and blood core and said with some emotion, "Those guys from the Star Clan are really terrifying. They can even do something like this. No wonder we've been searching for so long and haven't found him." As he spoke, he clenched his fist, and the core of flesh and blood disappeared somewhere. Then a gentle, godlike smile appeared on his face as he beckoned the 4 horsemen. "Let's go. Let's venture deeper into the starry sky. I anticipate that we will have a very great harvest this time." Chapter 2886. You have no right to negotiate along the way. More and more desolate puppets crawled out of the ruins. However, none of the desolate puppets could even get close to Wiggins. They simply dissipated into dust in midair. But no one noticed this scene, and no one knew that in the realm of the 6th generation, besides Chaos Zhang Yi, there was another being who was afraid of being killed. Zhang Yi sighed. With Yang Xinxin, Lu Ran, and the newly joined forces in the space-time continuation, They quickly searched for a path to the central region of the Earth within the giant experimental planet. The inability to use space travel directly will indeed slow down our travel efficiency, but being too fast is not necessarily a good thing. Zhang Yi proceeded steadily, advancing while having Lu Ran collect and analyze the surrounding materials, prioritizing their own safety. However, the number of wild puppets encountered inside the relatively narrow and complex planetary bodies has been increasing. Those 100,000 wild puppets are not all. This enormous experimental field holds too many secrets. In addition to those desolate puppets, the intelligent commanders at the Earth Center released even more objects that they used for experiments in order to prevent the invaders from getting closer. Even if Zhang Yi and the other 3 Black Knight-level powerhouses joined forces, their advance would hardly be very fast. Soon, when they reached the 12th level of the underground space, what awaited them was a group of incredibly strange-looking, weapon-like humanoid monsters. Not all of them are humanoid, but they also have limbs. Their bodies are covered with twisted and grotesque armor, and they have a long tail with a bone hammer trailing behind them. These creatures are numerous and extremely strong defensively, even displaying a more terrifying destructive power than the wild puppet. However, as the battle progressed, Zhang Yi soon discovered that their life force was not as strong as that of the wild puppet. Although the body has multiple hearts, it cannot be revived if its heart is completely destroyed. Zhang Yi speculated that a portion of the genes of the were integrated into the body of the Aragami. It took the group half an hour to clear out all the monsters in the entire area. Just as Zhang Yi was about to rest here for a while before considering going deeper into the area, he suddenly felt a gaze watching him. His gaze held a hint of wariness, yet also contained a complex and inexplicable joy. Zhang Yi suddenly turned his head and looked in that direction. Using the electronic telescope to zoom in, he immediately recognized who the person was. It turned out to be Edward, the vampire powerhouse who had participated in the assassination attempt on Zero Star. Edward looked somewhat disheveled, his once clean clothes now stained with blood. Seemed surprised to encounter the allied people here, and a look of joy appeared on his face. When confirmed that the other party was actually Zhang Yi's expression became twisted and strange again. Enemy detected. Lu Ran said coldly, "Shunfeng, Luo Qiao, come and help. Kill Lu." Without the slightest hesitation, Zhang Yi immediately decided to kill. When Edward sensed Zhang Yi charging towards him with murderous intent, he quickly used his electronic device to make a sound. "Wait a minute, are you sure you want to start a war with me here?" Zhang Yi sneered. "You want to kill me? Do you expect me to spare your life?" Edward's figure transformed into a giant bat, retreating rapidly as he coldly said, "Killing me won't be that easy. The huge commotion caused by our battle here will attract even more enemies. You don't want to be overwhelmed by the Araga tide, do you?" These words made Zhang Yi frown. The eye-catchers continued to infiltrate, their primary target undoubtedly being the core of the experimental star. If we make too much noise here and attract the attention of the AI in the control center, who knows what kind of terrifying weapon they might use to deal with us. However, this thought only lasted for a moment. Zhang Yi immediately sneered. "Try to negotiate with me? You have no right to do so. From the moment you attacked me, it was destined that I would kill you." Edward's expression changed drastically. He flapped his wings and suddenly flew towards the passage above. Even if it is fast, it can't outrun Zhang Yi, who has spatial abilities. In just about a minute, Zhang Yi, along with 2 helpers, arrived in front of. Death can happen in an instant. Without the slightest hesitation, Edward's body suddenly swelled up like a balloon, and then with a bang, it exploded in midair. Countless streams of blood shot out in all directions like arrows, as if a sun made of blood had risen in the sky. Zhang Yi's eyes narrowed, and to prevent the other party's blood from getting on him, he immediately activated the myriad manifestations of the netherworld. Nono knew that Edward possessed the ability to causally, and did not wish to have any causal involvement with him. However, the countless blood droplets, like sharp arrows, flew in all directions, quickly making Zhang Yi realize another troublesome problem. The vampire clan possesses extremely strong vitality, I have witnessed the ability of a vampire to heal with a drop of blood. Oh no! Don't let her get away. Zhang Yi immediately made his move, and the demon blade Divine Refinement took shape in his hand. With a fierce swing of the long sword, one after another, long rifts several meters long were opened in the netherworld, sweeping across towards the drops of blood. The problem was that there were simply too many blood droplets. No matter how fast Zhang Yi's attack speed was, he couldn't completely intercept them. In the blink of an eye, when Zhang Yi tried to chase after the blood again, the blood had already fallen everywhere and then quickly dried and died. Damn it, you're lucky. Zhang Yi took a deep breath and cursed under his breath. Lu Ran reminded him, let's not waste any more time on you. Killing a Black Knight level expert is just too difficult. Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow. I will not let you go. These people must die. Let's talk about this later. If a Black Knight level expert is determined to escape, even you will have a hard time catching and killing him. That's true. Once you reach the Black Knight level, your ability to survive alone is incredibly strong. Those people back then, including the Nightmare Clan member Jingmeng, were all killed because they were the ones who first harbored murderous intent and then trapped them in a state from which they could not escape. For example, when it encountered Edward this time, it could transform itself into billions of blood beads, and then any one of the blood beads could be reassembled into its original form. If someone is in this state and only wants to run away, they are really hard to kill. Zhang Yi snorted coldly. Since that's the case, then let's not worry about it anymore. But we should leave here first. If they discover our location, they might bring their helpers to attack us. Chapter 2887 The Silver Skull. Shere Khan watched quietly from the sidelines. This grudge had nothing to do with him, so he didn't intend to intervene, and Zhang Yi didn't force him either. Little did he know that at this very moment, Edward, who had appeared hundreds of kilometers away and whose body had been reformed from fresh blood, was wearing a sinister yet smug smile. We succeeded, he murmured, raising his right hand and conjuring a silver, old-fashioned flintlock pistol in the void. Chaos, die. He had barely finished speaking when he raised his hand and pulled the trigger. A ray of light shot out from the gun, but it was aimed at a certain point in the void. At this moment, Zhang Yi, who was hundreds of kilometers away, vaguely felt a sense of unease. This is the talent of a time-based ability user. He sensed that something was attacking him. But no matter how he sensed his surroundings, he couldn't detect any killing intent. The next moment, a ray of light appeared out of nowhere from the void and shot straight into his chest. The God-slaying armor helped him consume most of the energy from this attack, but the remaining aftershocks still impacted his physical body. Zhang Yi's physical body was fragile. Even the residual force of a full-force attack from a Black Knight level was enough to shatter his internal organs and take his life. The vortex in Zhang Yi's left pupil suddenly returned to normal, his pupil contracted sharply, and he immediately activated the Taishu bathrobe. How did that guy do that? A few seconds later, the predetermined attack emerged from the void and slammed hard into his Taishu bathrobe. The energies collided wildly, and ripples spread across the surface of the Taishu bathrobe. Everyone who witnessed this was greatly shocked, because they had no idea where this attack came from. It just appeared out of nowhere in the void. However, upon seeing this attack, Lu Karen immediately said, "That guy has already planted the seed of causality in you." Far away, Edward could sense that the one bound to him by cause and effect was not dead. Unfortunately, the shot missed. As expected, possessing time-related abilities allowed him to foresee that the approaching monster would be difficult to kill. Although he said that, the next moment he very skillfully inserted a bullet into the old-fashioned flintlock rifle. A very special silver bullet with a skull engraved on it. But how long can you hold out? Zhang Yi had always believed that Edward's causality ability could only be activated if certain conditions were met, such as touching or obtaining some kind of object on Edward's body. But he never expected that the condition Edward relied on to activate the law of causality was actually his gaze. When his eyes lock onto a certain being, the seed of cause and effect is already planted. Once the cause and effect are fulfilled, the bullets fired from the gun he holds, named the Spider Lily, will inevitably strike the target's body. Zhang Yi's eyes were icy and terrifying. That guy. He wanted to say something harsh, but he didn't even know where Edward was, let alone how to retaliate. Once one is ensnared by cause and effect, how can one escape? This is clearly an extremely difficult problem to solve. For example, once Huda locks onto you, it creates an unavoidable fatal attack. Even if your superpower index exceeds hers by 10,000 points, you cannot dodge it and can only choose to withstand it. Fortunately, he possessed the ability of the second hand of time, which allowed him to anticipate the opponent's attacks. Otherwise, he would have been killed by that attack. The second and third attacks came one after another, unhurriedly, and the fluctuations of Zhang Yi's Taishu bathrobe became increasingly intense. It's simply impossible for such an attack to break through his defenses in a short time. But there is a problem. If he wants to avoid being killed by Edward, he must always have all-around defensive capabilities activated. Yang Xinxin and others from the Shadow Sect also hurriedly appeared beside Zhang Yi. After learning that he was locked onto by the power of causality, everyone's faces showed tension. Everyone knows that the law of causality is the most unsolvable power. For once, Fatty Sue was surprisingly clever. I told you it wasn't a coincidence that we met here. That bastard deliberately pretended to bump into us, but actually he was plotting something big for Yin prison. Zhang Yi and the others maintained a sufficient distance because Edward's attacks were neither fast nor slow, launching at him every so often. Although it's impossible to break through Zhang Yi's defenses in a short time, it's still incredibly disgusting. In other words, if Zhang Yi encounters other battles during this period, there will be an additional layer of danger. The crowd looked at Zhang Yi with a hint of worry in their eyes, because once someone with the power of causality at the Black Knight level had planted a causal seed in their mind, an ordinary person would almost certainly die. Although Zhang Yi won't be killed quickly, it's extremely difficult to neutralize this ability. Zhang Yi took a deep breath and looked at Hutu, the leader of the group. Hutu, you know the law of causality better than anyone else. Tell me your solution. Is there any way to break it? Huta looked somewhat helpless. Edward's ability to apply causality far surpassed hers. There are only 3 ways to break the spell as far as I know. You already know the first 2, so I won't go into detail. The third way is to kill the caster. Zhang Yi pulled Hutu aside and whispered to her, "What is the casting radius of your Hell Guillotine spell?" Huta glanced at him indifferently, then silently distanced herself from him, afraid that the attack might affect her. The power of has no limits to casting, because the cause and effect of ignore space. Even across distant cosmic galaxies, the power can reach the other side the moment it is activated. Zhang Yi's head throbbed even more. Quantum entanglement? Damn it. Indeed, there is no absolute safety in this world. One must always maintain a sense of crisis. After advancing to the rank of Black Knight, his journey was too smooth, and he inevitably felt a bit arrogant at times. But ultimately, it's because he has the Dragon Clan protecting him, and most other races don't dare to openly attack him. But after actually coming into contact with those superior races, he realized how naive his idea was. Right now, he had actually been tricked by a vampire Black Knight. It doesn't sound good to say it out loud. And then there's the other party's ability and the most troublesome thing about causality. The previous nightmare had already caused him enough trouble. Now that he thought about it, those tribes that hated him and wanted to get rid of him were truly determined to kill him. Zhang Yi kept activating the Taishu bathrobe, and waves of attacks came one after another. He couldn't keep this energy-intensive defense system running forever.
Alright, that's it for today's chapter. Tell me in the comments which part you enjoyed the most. If you love manga style stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe the Buzz Play Manga. See you in the next chapter with more surprises. Thank you.